if you have people that you are calling contractors that don't really operate independent businesses at all, then we're going to look at whether you're the primary source of their income. And if you are, then that's an issue. Then we're going to come after that as an employee, not a contractor.
Guys, if you were to implement payroll, it's not that difficult. Like it's really not. There's some companies out there that'll make it very easy for you. So if you have someone that you truly are using for a majority of the time, and there are ways to do it through payroll. You don't have to pay salary. You can do hourly rates and part-time and all of that. Welcome back to the Don't Say That podcast, and today we're going to talk about a case that recently, just a few weeks ago, closed. $7 million. But even worse, they got the knock on the wrist saying you have to pay the FTC $7 million. But hey, FYI, as a parting gift, you'll now be sued by the Department of Labor and the Florida something or the other. So it's like, that to me gave me, I was twitching when you told me that, Greg, last time, because I was like, God, can you imagine being that company? You just settled with one painful and then you just know two more big pains are waiting. It's all over the gig economy. Okay, guys, here's the deal. This is a part of, we had a conversation, right, where we talked about heavy regulation and the difference between which administration is in and in which one is not. And one likes to regulate more and one doesn't regulate as much. And this isn't a political opinion. It's just fact. Like, this is literally fact. It's Democrats regulate more, Republicans regulate less. One of the regulations that has been getting stronger and stronger in the sense of, is this whole look, especially in our business, us internet marketers, that, and I don't say us because that's not me, man. I run a proper organization. I got benefits. I got 401ks for my team, health benefits, dental benefits, eye benefits. I don't know. I got all kinds of benefits. But a lot of businesses will get around a lot of these social security taxes and unemployment rules and And so what they'll just say is, hey, just work as a contractor. And that's being looked upon now very strongly. So we're going to talk about what happened in the gig, what's it called? Gig what? What was the name of the company, Greg?
Well, there's gig work and Arise.
Gig work. Giggity gig.
Gig work. It's called Arise.
Anyone know that? No one? Greg, you don't know that joke?
Yeah. Jeez.
You gotta watch some Family Guy. All right. Never mind.
Mama.
Yeah, that part I know. That damn video.
Yeah.
That's real, by the way. Every child, both of our children. The youngest one doesn't speak yet.
So
all right. Sorry. So Arise and gig work, are they the same? Is it the same company?
Well, it's
two separate.
No, it's Arise Virtual Solutions, but they're
okay.
They're a gig work company.
So talk about this, and I think it naturally segues into the conversation about contractors versus employees.
Let me go and say this first, because we just did that podcast where we talked about what complaints are in these press releases. So I don't know any of these guys at Arise Virtual Solutions, right? I don't know them personally. I don't know what they did. Obviously, it was an investigation that was similar to yours, where there was probably a CID that was issued. They did a term where they worked with the FTC, and they came to a resolution to the case by entering a simultaneous complaint and settlement. So I'm sure the complaint has some very pro-FTC language versus what the business actually did. And then, the press release obviously was horrible because it showed the $7 million payment. So anyway, I don't know them. I don't know what they did. I didn't help represent them. So from the external view, I'm looking at this just as an attorney who says, okay, let's look at every case that comes out. And this just was announced on the 2nd of July, so it's pretty relevant to what we're doing here. So let's kind of dig into it. So in this case, again, Anna kind of set the tone for what they did. They did gig work. It's kind of an interesting case where there's talking about hey, you're looking to, you want to reduce the out-of-pocket expense. You're looking for, operating in this gig economy. Why don't you come to work for us? We'll show you how to do it, and we can show you how you can get paid up to $18 an hour doing X, Y, and Z. So it seems like a pretty benign offer. You're not talking about saying we're going to show you how to make millions and billions of dollars on this. But this was a very lucrative business for them, and the volume of individuals that came in was quite high. And so the complaint itself, and I'm not saying these are 100% true allegations, but I'm just saying this is what the allegation, the complaint was, that beginning in 2020, they were making these representations. You could come in, you could make $18 an hour. It's on this gig platform, which is, but what they said that the average job that they had even on their own platform at the time was only $12 an hour. So anyway, the basis of this complaint is that there was a misrepresentation about the extra income they could make from these gig services. So, but the advertising was wrong. So what happened in the complaint itself is, and the price volume, and this is another indication of like what the average ticket was. And I know we get a lot of clients who are like, well, I'm doing a small ticket offer and they really shouldn't be looking at me for this. Well, the average ticket offer was about $250 on this. So it was about volume, right? The volume of the offer was out there. And so the FTC looking at this said, hey, look, and then this is an issue of first impression because it's the first case where the commission has charged a company that's in this gig economy with violating what they call the Federal Business Opportunity Rule. So in this case, they probably brought it under section, the FTC Act, Section 5, under Deceptive Trade Practices Act. But then they said, well, in addition, we're going to add this Federal Business Opportunity Rule into it. And I've noticed in the automators case and some of the similar cases that have been brought, the FTC is really heavily leaning into this business opportunity case, statute. They did DK automation a year ago. So you're going to see a lot of cases where they're doing this business opportunity statute. So in this case, company decided, hey, I'm not going to go through litigation similar to what you did with Learn, and said, hey, listen, it's going to be way more expensive to go and litigate this case. We'll go ahead and we'll enter into settlement with the FTC for $7 million. Now, the interesting part of this is not just that it's an issue of first impression and the business opportunity and this gig economy, first time they've come after that, and the low ticket price. It's what the FTC said in their press release. So they said, hey, and again, remember there's a continuity provision in this as well. They were doing a $40 a month mandatory fees on continuity, and that's how they were making a lot of their money on this, was the subscription base as well. But the interesting note on the press release is what you kind of alluded to before. Now remember, we're going to go back to January of this year, past podcast episode, where the U.S. Department of Labor made a ruling and said, hey, we're going to change how we characterize or classify independent contractors. We're going to say now, instead of all these 16 factors that we've been looking at traditionally, if your contractors predominantly make money from you than any other source, we're going to simplify it and say they're not contractors, they're employees. So U.S. Department of Labor made that release clear back in January of this year. Now, fast forward to this case with the Rise Virtual Solutions. Now they issue a press release and they say, hey, not only did we just settle for $7 million, but this did not, because they put a note on this case, did not resolve some other issues that are currently going on. So there's a concurrent action that was brought both by the U.S. Department of Labor, the Better Business Bureau of Southeast Florida, and the U.S. District for the Southern District of Florida over misclassifications of individuals as independent contractors versus employees, which tells me this is the first case that I've seen since the U.S. Department of Labor, and there could be others, but the first one that's really been made public with the FTC as it pertains to this change in the way that there's classification of employees versus contractors by the U.S. Department of Labor, that when they made that release back in January of this year. So it's going to be interesting. I'm going to be monitoring this case to see how that goes, but I know the arguments in the case, and I've downloaded the complaint, are really that there's this mischaracterization. All these people who signed up. So in this offer with their eyes, what they did is they got them to come in. They said, hey, we're going to get you this $18 an hour in this gig company or network. And then they categorized them all as contractors. So anybody who did make money and they did pay out, they didn't pay out as employees. Well, the U.S. Department of Labor is saying, no, you should have been paying these as W-2 employees. So now you're going to, if they're successful, what's the ramification? Got to reclassify them. And then the IRS is going to stick their nose in this and say, hey, listen, you haven't been paying employee tax. You haven't been paying wages and compensation plans. You haven't been giving them benefits. And all of a sudden, this small, hey, we're going to help people learn how to make $18 an hour is a big albatross, a big weight around their neck, because a millstone, because now they're going to have to go back and pay penalties and tax for all the unemployment benefits and everything else that they didn't pay for this characterization. And this case, I mean, they started in 2020, so they got at least 4 years to go back at. And the IRS can go back 3 years easy, no problem. Just think about your personal tax returns. So this is going to be, the $7 million is a scratch on the surface. This could be way bigger for this company than $7 million.
Oh man, I wish them the best. That's
yeah,
I can't tell you. My stomach is doing this right now because you've named off like 3 or 4 different agencies, 5,000-pound juggernauts, 2,000-pound juggernauts, 3,000-pound juggernauts. They're just
getting in the octagon ring with like 3 of the baddest
this
mothers.
This is the thing, man. I gotta say, this is something that just yeah, I'm really like it's hitting, because it just makes you realize, like, when the government wants you, like, man, they come. Like they come to destroy. And yeah, wow. Oof. And I'm not sticking up for them, but I have no idea. Like I didn't even know what Arise is until I heard about this case. I have no clue. I've never been to their website, so I'm not here to pass any. I'm not saying they're right, government's wrong, government's right, they're wrong. I'm just like, the thought in my mind of being hit by so many different agencies at one time is just like heart-wrenching, and it just makes me realize all the more that, like, as entrepreneurs, as business owners, guys, you gotta it's I know it's a sucky cost up front in the beginning to like know these things and to have the appropriate attorneys who can make sure you're not making these mistakes, but like it's just becoming so vital now that if you don't do it, the end product is horrific. You know, I remember, Greg, there was a situation for us years ago. And I could talk about this because it was so long ago that I think it's outside the it's outside any like window. But we also had a lot of contractors, and honestly, we weren't doing it because we didn't want to pay the taxes or whatever, or like we were just doing it because it's just easier sometimes.
Yeah.
To have contractors versus employees. You know, like as a business, especially when you're just getting started, you have ups and downs, and you can kind of control the costs with contractors better. With employees, you set fees, you know, set salaries and benefits, and those are very hard to backtrack from. So one of our core reasons in the beginning to do a lot of contractors was just the flexibility and the ability for us to properly run the business and sustain. But we would, back then, we don't do it now, back then we would be amicable to send the contractor, if they were doing more than like 20 hours a week worth of work for us, we'd like send them a company laptop or whatever. And we specifically said, hey, do your work on this, because thought we were being smart because we wanted to protect our proprietary information.
Yeah.
So we were like, hey, you have to use our laptop to do our work because we want it to be protected by us. You can't take it off. Like we had like a lot of lockdown mechanisms on the computers. And you know, at that time we did get really good advice from an attorney that said, hey guys, the minute you do this, they're employees. You can't classify them as contractors because you're sending them company equipment. They're spending X amount of hours. Like they're making sizable amount of income. And so we were like, oh, okay, fine. Some of them we actually then said, okay, fine, well, let's bring them in as employees. And some of them we said, hey guys, we got to go back to a true contractor relationship to make sure that it's all on the up and up. But I just want everyone here, because I think most people watching this podcast, you guys are hiring contractors. So Greg, like I'm just curious though. A lot of people that are watching this are like making $500,000 or $1 million. They're coaches. And they truly are using contractors. Like they're working with people that truly do work with other people. They don't have the resources to put a proper payroll in place and benefits and all of that. What are the rules? Like, so how do they know comfortably that, okay, no, this person really is? Because California made it really tough. Like in California now, hiring a contractor or freelancer is like near impossible. From what I've heard, I don't know the rules, but how can someone know? That's question number one, is what are the rules that someone can apply to know that, no, this person truly is a contractor? Question number two is, if in that case you are truly hiring contractors, is it better to go international so that you're like kind of just not going to mess with this law, which sucks because that would hurt the U.S. economy? And then question number three is, how the hell do Uber and Lyft and all of them get around this? Like, so three-layer question. Question number one, how do we determine authentically, justifiably, defendably that someone is a contractor and doesn't deserve employee classification?
Yeah, so the traditional way of classification for employee versus employer outside of the state of California, which is, I don't know if there is a single contractor in the state of California. Uber and Lyft lost those cases in California. They have to consider the drivers in those cases as employees, not contractors.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so there are cases, you can look them up, Uber and Lyft cases with the state of California Department of Labor. So traditionally there's 16 factors, and they look at different things like this. You look at like
Did you say
said,
there's 16 factors?
yeah, 16 different types of factors that traditionally the U.S. Department of Labor would look at to determine.
God.
But there are things like this, though. It's like the equipment. Do they use their own equipment or do you supply it? Things like that. Do they have their own business? Do they not have their own business? Do they have risk? It all comes down to, do they have independent risk from you? Meaning, could they go and lose money based upon the transaction? If they could, then they're a contractor. Just like I could contract with you, and I'm not your employee, but if I bid out and say, hey, I'm going to provide this service and it costs me, because I have to retain staff to do that service, and it costs me more than the actual bid, then I have loss. So that's traditionally what the U.S. Department of Labor looked at. And then they said, this year, hey, it's too hard. We're going to simplify it. If you have people that you are calling contractors that don't really operate independent businesses at all, then we're going to look at whether you're the primary source of their income. And if you are, then that's an issue. Then we're going to come after that as an employee, not a contractor. So a couple of things that I would recommend when you're dealing with contractors: make sure they got their own business set up. You're paying their business, not you. Now, make sure, this is really important, and this is my legal advice of today, tip of today, is that when you engage into like a non-disclosure agreement or a contractor agreement, make sure that they sign it personally in addition to their company. So yes, have them pay their company, but make sure that as an individual they sign it as well. Why? Because the restrictive covenants of those agreements, the contractor agreements, what I mean by restrictive covenants is, do not do this, this, or this, meaning don't solicitate my clients or my contractors or my vendors and stuff like that. Those type of agreements, if you only have it signed with the company and not with the individual, then they're not enforceable against the individual. So I always make sure that when I have those agreements signed, I will do it with the company that they own, but it's always with the individual too. So make sure you've got that in place. Make sure you got a good contractor agreement. We have one in the academy. So if you need something like that, part of the academy, you could do that.
Compliantacademy.com, compliantacademy.com.
Shameless pitch. So anyway, so that, and then make sure that if you pay the business, so that's going to help quite a bit when you're paying a business. Now, the U.S. Department of Labor, we're going to file this Aspire case and see how that actually goes through as well. But they're going to say, are you predominantly paying? So I had the conversation with a business owner last night, and they're going to a lot of offshore VAs and then contractors that are out of the country. So a lot better argument when they're out of the country that they are contractors versus individuals that are in the country. So if you use people that are VAs out of the country, way easier to justify that they're contractors than those that are in the country. Okay. So just a couple of tips of the trade for all of this.
So let's go through some hypothetical examples for a few minutes. So most people, marketers, coaches, consultants who are listening to this, they might have a customer support person that they've contracted to do 20 hours a week, customer support. Now, they don't know if that person has other clients or not, and how much they're making, and if they're making most of their money from them or not. I feel like that's pretty intrusive to ask. So in a situation like that, and they don't have a payroll system, they don't have any of those mechanisms.
Let's use Aspire as the Arise Virtual Solutions. Let's look at Arise as our test, right? For them, their ad was, hey, you've not been in the gig economy, come and work for us and we'll get you a job making $18 an hour. So in that case, how would they, that'd be pretty clear. I think that the Department of Labor's argument is in the complaint and their federal action on whether they've been miscategorized is pretty clear that the way they're taking is these people didn't have a job before in this. So how would they be making money more than that?
Okay.
So it depends on the offer, right? It depends on what you're doing and the contractors you're hiring. But you'll know, like I have clients that are in the seminar space and they have weekly events across the United States. And these contractors, it'd be impossible because of how much time they're spending on this one company to be making
So
money.
that's an employee.
Yeah. So you have to look at it and go like, hey, the type of business I have. Now, you hire an ad copy person, they're doing ad copy for half a dozen other companies. Pretty good knowledge that that's probably a contractor versus an employee.
Well,
right?
especially like, so for example, let's say you're paying people through Upwork, right? So you've hired someone off of Upwork, you read their reviews, they've obviously done work for other people, that's why you hired them, there's reviews, and you bring them on to do either a project basis, or you do say, okay, 20 hours a week, I'm going to hire and pay you through Upwork to do XYZ thing. Sounds to me like that would be somewhat justifiable because you're like, yeah, I hired them literally through a freelancer website. They have other clients on their docket, I could see, and I'm billing, and they're billing me through Upwork, and that's, now if you're doing it, I guess they're US based in a different state, and you're paying them 40 hours a week through Upwork, and they don't have anyone else working for them, and they're just themselves, like that starts to sound like, okay, you're crossing the line. They're really an employee. You're just using Upwork as a middle ground. But for anyone who's like super worried about it, I would ideally ask you just like reach out to Greg, engage him, and ask him, have a quick call with him, pay him the hourly rate, and just say, hey, these are my team members. Here's XYZ. How's this? I will also tell people that, guys, if you were to implement payroll, it's not that difficult. Like it's really not. There's some companies out there that'll make it very easy for you. So if you have someone that you truly are using for a majority of the time, and there are ways to do it through payroll. You don't have to pay salary. You can do hourly rates and part-time and all of that. The thing though is, yes, there's payroll. Like you have to issue payroll, you have to pay those Social Security, unemployment taxes and all that. You have to have a certain level of benefits are required. And what I found to be, just personally as an entrepreneur, what I found to be a little bit of a pain in the butt was that when you hire people virtually, their states, you got to worry about all their states, and you have to file certain things. So like I remember for a while we had employees in California, and we're getting dinged every year with taxes for California because we had a physical representation in the state of California. I actually don't know if we still have any employees or not, and we certainly don't have a policy that says we don't hire from that state, but and other states are catching up now. So other states are like, wait a minute, if California can do that, why can't we do that? It's a revenue source. So, something to be aware of. We're not going to cover it in a 20-minute podcast episode. That's something that you got to engage an attorney on. And I don't even know if, Greg, if that's like your super hyper expertise. We actually have an HR attorney, like someone that we specifically asked these questions to.
I do it. I mean, I do business litigation and business counseling. So I've been.
So there you go. So reach out to guardianlaw.com.
Before we end this, let me go back into point out a couple of things on this Arise case, which is a little bit unique than other cases. They did not sue the individuals. Now, Arise is kind of a venture capitalist group, so it's comprised of a lot of investors. They didn't go after the individuals, which is unique. They kept it just with Arise Virtual Solutions Inc.
Somebody had connections.
Could be, and very well could be, but that it's very unique. You don't see that very often, that they just name the business itself, because the shareholder.
It was a joke.
Yeah.
With you, we used to have a joke. We used to be like, somebody's got pictures. Who's got pictures?
Yeah, I mean, I'm for sure somebody's got pictures on some of those.
Somebody's got pictures.
Yeah. But if you go back,
by the way, guys, that's a total joke. We are not saying it seriously. No. We do not mean it.
No.
It was just used to be a joke, being like, "Hey, why didn't they go after that person?" It's like, they must have pictures.
Yeah. No, it's a joke, but
joke.
Somebody has pictures. I'm just saying. So, but if you
we're joking, but we're not.
Yeah, if you go into the cause of action, which I always do with these lawsuits, what's the number one cause of action again in this case? Misrepresentations regarding earnings. Number one, like it always is. And then they add this misrepresentation regarding hourly earnings, because they talk about the differences between what the typical customer is doing. And then they get into the violations of the BizOp rule. So it's just an interesting case. Yeah. And they have disclosure document violations, earnings claim violations, so they kind of go through all of the kind of the main things that are in here. So anyway.
And again, guys, we're neither Greg or I know much about this company. We're reading what I can tell you. I mean, I've read my own complaint letter. I'm like, wait, what? So all the best to everyone at Arise. Seriously, and I mean this. Like I wish you the best. You've got a lot coming at you, and I just wish you the best. It's tough.
Yeah.
And,
Nobody enjoys. We are not like, hey, we enjoy the sorrow of other marketing companies and investors.
There are some companies though, Greg. If they were to get sued, I might enjoy the sorrow of them. But I'm not in the business of snitching. So
Meaning karma.
We did.
Karma.
Yeah, you remember that episode where we're like, Greg's like, in such and such and such, and we're like, beep 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 beep.
Yeah.
He took out all the names. Someone asked me on that. They were like, was he actually naming companies? I'm like, oh yeah, we were naming companies. We were legitimately naming companies. We built it out. Awesome stuff. Listen, everybody, come support the cause. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Spread the word. Tell others. Don't say that.com for the book, compliantacademy.com for the academy, and complyly.com for the software. Come support the cause. Join the compliance revolution. Greg, as always, you rock. Thank you so much for everything you do for this community. And to the rest of you, love you guys. And remember, when life pushes you, stand straight, smile, and push it the heck back, and don't get your ass sued. We'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.